I thought it was interesting at one point he also basically specifically said, referencing not showing up for OTAs, that he was just doing what his agent told him to do. Mm-hmm. And he almost made it sound like the agent's the boss. Like the agent's calling the shots in this kind of situation.
Time 100 most influential people. I mean, it's reality.
David Mulugheta, of course, his agent, and was the agent that negotiated everything with Micah Parsons a summer ago as well. I feel like somebody probably needs to get in George Pickens' ear and let him know that's not actually the way that this has to work. Mm-hmm. He works for you.
Sure, but I think when people hire agents, though, they're thinking, maybe I don't fully understand what's best for me, right? They're ceding some responsibility in that ground, and ultimately what happens is the agent interjects and sits there and says, you got to go through me to talk to him. There were a couple of examples in the NFL recently, though, like I think of T.J. Watt with the Steelers, who basically was in a contract holdout, had enough, and walked into the front office and said, I'm here to sign, I want to play. Yeah. So there are times where the agent gets tossed to the woodshed, but agents also exist for a reason, because ultimately Pickens wants to be paid what he's worth. Yes, he wants to compete and win, but you have to balance those two things. In this situation, as we outlined, he didn't have the leverage to really go for one or the other.
I think, too, just the contrast of the fact that Mulugheta represents both Micah Parsons and George Pickens. Yes, Micah was in a different situation, a different predicament, and the franchise tag wasn't necessarily at play in that situation. But George, I think he has such a bad rap from his time in Pittsburgh that even though he had a great season last year in Dallas from a personality and a meshing with his teammates standpoint, I think people still think of him with that negative connotation, right? He's been a joyful, a positive contribution to this team since he got here. He has not once made it seem to be about him or to be about anything other than him wanting to be on a team that wins. And his actions have backed that up. And I feel like this kind of run of events has only further kind of shown that. He's, to your point, he's doing what his agent's telling him, but I think that is because he knows his agent understands the financial and business side of football better than he does, and he's fine to cede that responsibility to him. However, I think he made it clear to his agent, look, I want to play when it comes time to play. And that's where you see kind of the contrast between Mulugheta obviously knew enough or felt like in the Micah Parsons situation, Parsons had enough leverage to not do mandatory minicamp and not participate in training camp. With George, he still has that working knowledge, but he's taking a different path. And I think that is more on the player and more on George saying, look, yes, I want to get paid. If I'm on the franchise tag this year and that's going to be that, then how do I just accept that and still get to play? It's a stark contrast.
He was essentially, and I think I mentioned this a while ago, but he was essentially negotiating with one arm tied behind his back because, yes, he's playing on a franchise tag, but he does want to physically play.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I think Mike brought up the idea. It's like, hey, if you like where you work, you're going to make certain concessions to stay there as long as it keeps everything together, right? And that's not essentially where Pickens found himself. He was forced into this by the franchise tag and the situation, but he's also not against or trying to rock the boat enough to sit there and force his way out. Yeah. Because I do think as much as Mulugheta got Parsons what he was owed essentially from a value standpoint, right, I do think Pickens saw that and probably learned a little bit from that situation and go like, not that.
I don't want that.
Whatever we do, I want what I'm worth, but not enough to sit there and lose a situation that I found a home in, especially judging based off of how Pittsburgh went.
Yeah, I don't want to end up back somewhere where I don't know who my quarterback is. I don't want to end up somewhere that's, nowhere near as lucrative. Don't trade me to the Jaguars. Please.
The Jaguars are good, finally. We can't keep throwing them to the woodshed. But yes, I understand.
But this is a team that can't even play their own home games because they know that they aren't going, they have to go play overseas to try and accentuate their fan base.
Well, and DeMarcus Ware literally this week talked about, look, I don't know who I would have been if I was a Jaguar. No offense to the Jacksonville who's catching strays.
It's interesting. Darren Woodson said something something similar to.
Literally. So
It's always the Jaguars. They're always the punching bag.
And the Jaguars have been in the AFC Championship game multiple times since the Cowboys last win. So I mean, like that.
coming from your resident Cowboys fan, Andrew
Yeah, sure, definitely.
And yet still, here they are, this
And
franchise
yet-
that can't seem to.
Anyway.
They're always the rumored, they're going to leave Jacksonville and go somewhere else. They're always we're just going to turn them into the international team, and they're going to play 8 home games in 8 different international cities. Anyway.
The ultimate Jacksonville sports show.
No, the ultimate Jaguars.
Oh boy.
Buddy. Do we?
Unless
have
y'all
a-
wanna talk about the
we have
jumbo
a Tegna
shrimp.
station in Jacksonville, right? I think.
Yeah.
Maybe that's next on the docket. The ultimate Jacksonville sports show. Lot to get into over the course of a special 2-hour edition of the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. We will return to Jonah Javad here in just a little bit as we get back into the soccer of it all. We're going to have FC Dallas head coach Eric Quill join the show in just about 15 minutes' time. But we also got a chance today to hear from the Cowboys coordinators, and that includes defensive coordinator Christian Parker. If we can call up SOT number 23 here, he had some thoughts about what he has seen so far from the much ballyhooed rookie Caleb Downs. I think it's good that they're trying to at least somewhat pump the brakes on all this thing because he's not going to be an all-pro in week 2.
Yeah.
It's not realistic to expect that or foist that upon him.
Or if he starts on that path, it doesn't mean he's going to maintain it. Like there's two different ways to look at it.
Yeah,
so.
this is not a linear. I mean, even Micah Parsons,
Yes.
who did kind of it was week 2 in L.A. against the Chargers, had the sack on. Why am I drawing a blank
Justin
on the
Herbert?
Chargers? Thank you, Justin Herbert. And off he went. But then there were still peaks and valleys to that as he worked his way into the elite talent that he is. It's not going to always be this linear process. There's a lot of reason to be excited about this kid, but it is smart for them to try and tell the fan base and, frankly, tell all of us in the media that spend every day talking about this kid, hang on a second. Let him actually get on the field first.
I will say, though, Christian Parker was asked a little bit about communication styles somewhere else along the line of that press conference. And talk about catching strays. Deron Bland caught a stray when he was like, talk about the guys who aren't naturally big communicators like Deron Bland. That was in the question. And Christian Parker went on to praise Caleb and say, look, the guys who are naturally good at communicating, like, we're going to ask them to communicate. He is one of those guys. And yes, he is a rookie, but at the same time, if that's a strength of his, we're going to go ahead and try to amplify that and help him lean into that. And so I think just the fact that yes, expectations are high. Yes, they're doing a good job of tempering those expectations, or at least trying to. But at the same time, like, if you've got I'm not going to say I think he's a superstar already. He hasn't played a snap in the
a guy
NFL.
with
But
that
if
kind
you
of
have a
potential, yes.
superstar right on your hands, you're not going to try to dim that light. You're
Right.
going to try to let it shine. So,
But no, that was part of the.
You gonna start singing?
yeah, I thought about it and I said, don't do that.
I was going to say
Stop
the
yourself.
fans in England and
I was-
Croatia are going to help us out with that here a little bit.
Where's Jonah?
But that was part of the criticism of the defense last year, is that they were forced into a scheme that didn't really fit the
Fit.
personnel that was in. And again, part of that was not by design based on losing Parsons right before the season, but it's heartwarming to me but it's interesting to me that they're leaning into strengths. They're doing the exact opposite, and I like the answer from earlier in his press conference where Parker was asked specifically, hey, have you talked to returners from the defense on how they're approaching this season? Hey, we don't want you to do this, X, Y, and Z. And Parker was like, I had nothing to do with that defense last year. We're starting from scratch. We're building from the bottom up. That's, to me, the right way to approach it. This isn't about putting down the last regime to some degree. This isn't about trying to course correct based off of that. It is about establishing a foundation that he oversees from the beginning. And maybe that's lip service. Maybe, certain players will look at it from that lens. I'm like, I need to do what's best for me in terms of this scheme, but or at least try to improve off of last year. But it's the right approach, and I'm happy that the defense is taking that tact as opposed to, well, we just need to do everything opposite that we did last year.
CeeDee Lamb was asked about his defense and what it's like to face Christian Parker's defense, and CeeDee Lamb's answer that I think probably put a smile on a lot of Cowboys fans' faces was, it's annoying. And Parker was asked about that comment, but also asked about how annoying it is to go against the Cowboys offense and try and slow them down. This is a good, you always hear about these guys saying, iron sharpens iron, and they want to, that's always the refrain in the offseason and especially at training camp. This feels like an opportunity for them to really lean into that, though, especially for this Cowboys defense and especially for Christian Parker in year number 1 as a defensive coordinator, as the guy who's actually calling the plays on a down-in, down-out basis. To have to face this offense all through the offseason, and especially when they get to Oxnard, that is going to be a really good test for him to see, all right, where are you really in some of these spaces where you're doing things you never have done before.
And he was asked about just the overall, you're coming in and not only are you in a new organization, in a new place, everything's new, you also have exponentially more responsibility than you ever have in your life. So to your point, to be able to kind of get, or at least hit the ground running, trying to take on all of these new additional responsibilities, and then all the while be going up against offenses or an offense that is going to prepare you for at least maybe not the best that you're going to see throughout the season, but up there. Yeah. I think that'll only help. Now it's just a matter of, okay, how do you translate that? How do you use the lip service of, oh, yeah, it's good for us now here in the offseason. It's been a good offseason. I mean, what else is he going to say? But how does that translate into, okay, actually being a defense that, it sounds like from CD's perspective at least, annoying. I think the fact that they're trying to implement this disguise concept, that is something that could help them very much so come regular season. But all of it right now is still just conjecture. So
yeah,
but
they've got to put something behind it.
That is precisely why it helps having Pickens there.
Yes.
Because and if CDs finds it annoying, Pickens would be the solution. You've got 2 great wide receivers. See how you cover this. You know what I mean? That's the ace that the Cowboys have in the hole. And if you have a defense that sees that and can prepare for that and understand what the challenge lies in it, that is a huge boon, especially for a defense that is trying to find its ground.
And completely learn a new defensive scheme.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not to mention, I think what Clayton Adams said, I mean, he touched on that exact point. The offensive coordinator said, look, having both of those guys here makes a world of difference. To Parker's point about, look, we're not game planning against each other.
Right.
We're just trying to basically figure it out as we go. For them to get that type of experience now, when yes, they're not game planning, but you're having months to prepare and months to see things that maybe you hadn't seen before, and you can then course correct.
Right.
He's getting this time, this extended time to prepare against, an offense that is at least going to be up there with some of the best in the NFL this season.
And especially when you're talking about design and offenses and defenses that might be a little more complex based off of what we've seen over the last couple of years. You want the fundamentals to be second nature. You don't want to have to sit there and think, where do I have to be if I'm lost? You know what I mean? And your first thought is, hey, I forgot what concept this is. Let me just stay in the initial scheme, and maybe that makes a difference. You know what I mean? These are the times where you can sit there and say, I remember this in practice. Well, that's something I can at least lean on. Yes.
Yeah.
One more shot to get to from the Cowboys coordinators, because Clayton Adams talked today as well, and he had the opportunity to be a part of the NFL's Accelerator program, and he was asked about what he learned from that and how that may help him going forward. I thought it was smart of him to circle around to that at the end, hey, I'm not trying to go anywhere. I'm trying to be better at my job here, and that smart, but also if you get a head coaching opportunity, how do you not take it? There are 32 of them in the world. If and when that opportunity comes, and there's a lot of people that believe that he has that kind of potential, we know you're going. It's okay. It's not the end of the world.
I understand that point. At the same time, I'm like, if the Browns come knocking, I might think twice. You know what I mean? We're just throwing shade at every AFC team.
There
That's what we're doing.
are 27 of them that you actually want.
Exactly. And again,
and don't resign in Jacksonville or Cleveland. Go ahead, sorry.
But this is where the being at the Star and being a member of the Cowboys makes a significant difference. The offensive coordinator at the Cowboys means about as much in some circles as an NFL head coach, probably about half across the league. It's probably as good a job as 16 other places. So just in terms of opportunity, exposure, all those kind of things. So it's not saying he doesn't eventually make that jump. I think he's comfortable where he is right now, and that's important.
I also think he gets so overshadowed. I'll be quiet in a second, but I think he gets so overshadowed.
You're good.
Because of the fact that Shoddy calls the plays.
Yes.
And that the
I
offense
agree
was
with
so
this.
explosive last year. That's what got all the attention. And you have superstars at quarterback and both your receiver positions.
You have a sandbox for
Right.
Yeah.
Like your running back is a guy that nobody had any expectations for coming into the season. And but you're still laughing at me.
Like, you have as much right to airtime real estate as I do. Just keep talking.
Throw an elbow. Throw an elbow.
But your little face, you were taking a breath and you're about to go.
It's okay.
I know.
You beat me to the punch. You're good.
Derailed. Go
All
ahead.
I'm saying is he gets overlooked because of all of the hoopla kind of around him and the fact that Shoddy's so involved on the offensive side of the ball. And then you have Christian Parker, who's this young and upcoming hot shot. And it's like, wait, by the way, you have an offensive coordinator who's being considered as a potential head coaching candidate because he's that good. And he's that, I think from everything we've seen and heard about him, he's one of those Masai Ujiri type guys where it's like his character, I think, flows through every bit of his body. Okay.
Yeah.
Back
Yes to all of that. And we do have to hit a break.